welcome back to the Wellness Paradox podcast. I'm so grateful that you can join us on this journey towards greater human flourishing. As always, I'm your host, Michael Stack, an exercise physiologist by training and a health entrepreneur and a health educator by trade. And I'm fascinated by a phenomena I call the wellness paradox. This paradox, as I view it, is the trust, interaction, and communication gap between fitness professionals and our medical community. This podcast is all about closing off that gap by disseminating the latest, most evidence-based, and most engaging information in the health sciences. And to do that in episode 83, we're joined by Ryan DeLuca. And if Ryan's name sounds familiar to you, it might be because you know one of his previous fitness technology ventures, bodybuilding.com, which he founded in 1999 and sold in 2015. Now, this is not a conversation around bodybuilding.com and supplements. This is a conversation around Ryan's new fitness technology venture, which is something called Black Box VR Fitness. So yes, this is a conversation around virtual reality fitness. And I realize this has kind of existed on the periphery of most fitness professionals' minds. But I remind you, not very long ago, we weren't thinking about things like Zoom workouts and connected fitness equipment. And here we are, 3 years after the pandemic going, boy, we wish we would have been on the leading edge of that when it was becoming a reality. And that's really what this conversation with Ryan is around, how we understand this emerging technology so we can be informed as fitness professionals and embrace it as the technology becomes less expensive and more ubiquitous. And as we'll talk about in this episode, Meta, Facebook's parent company, as well as Apple, are literally pumping billions of dollars into this technology. So it's not if it's going to become ubiquitous and widely used, it's when it happens, and the fitness space needs to be ready for that. And as Ryan will point out in this episode, there's a lot of great application of VR technology towards improving adherence and compliance to exercise routines for non-traditional exercisers by adding a component of gamification to it. And I think you're going to find this conversation very fascinating. I know I did. There's going to be a lot of great information on the show notes page. Some of the things that Ryan and I are going to talk about are better seen than they are heard on a podcast. So please check out the show notes page. That can be found at wellnessparadoxpod.com/episode 83. Please enjoy this conversation with Ryan DeLuca. Today, we're delighted to be joined by Ryan DeLuca. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Definitely excited to talk about exciting things in the world of VR fitness.
Yeah, absolutely. And so am I. I was just, mentioning before we went on air that this is such an intriguing, emerging area, but not a lot of people are talking about it. So the goal of this conversation, as much as anything else, is just to get the word out there and get fitness professionals thinking of this new technology, because I think whenever anyone hears about a new technology, immediately they're afraid of it. But before we launch into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? Because I bet some of our listeners probably recognize your name, but maybe they don't know exactly where it's coming from. So tell us your background and kind of what led you to this point.
Sure. Yeah. So right after high school, back in 1996, I started to hear about the internet and, this thing called cyberspace. And I got really interested in the whole idea. And so I started doing like little internet businesses and really studying it, and eventually bought the name bodybuilding.com from somebody that owned it, but wasn't using it. And I started to create a fitness website, which became the largest, most visited fitness website in the world of any type of fitness website. It was the largest e-tailer of sports nutrition products, like things that you see at GNC, like whey protein and creatine and pre-workouts, and also the largest fitness community with a really big active message board community. And we really just spent those 17 years that I ran that company really building out the tools and content to help people to be able to stick to their fitness goals. And so it's basically, like I said, 17 years as CEO, and it's basically 24/7, and decided to take a little bit of a break. And this was at the end of 2015, and sold the business to Liberty Media out of Denver. And that's took a little break there and said, I got to get back into startups because I got really bored really fast.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, yeah, I mean, you certainly were successful in the fitness technology space. I can't help but think back in the mid 90s, buying bodybuilding.com for whatever you paid for it from whoever you bought it from. Like, who would have ever thought that you would have grown it into the massive empire that you did? So it's such a neat story that I feel like is a whole separate podcast. But we're here to talk about Black Box VR Fitness. And I heard you talk about this concept originally in Chicago at the Club Industry Executive Summit. And again, my interest is very much piqued for this podcast and for our listeners. So tell us a little bit more about Black Box VR Fitness and how it works.
Sure. So, like I said, at the end of 2015, retired from bodybuilding.com and took a little break. And what I really wanted to do is get back into what I loved, which is, building, like I said, technology for fitness. And, when you think bodybuilding.com, you may not think it was a high tech business, but I mean, it was like one of the first e-tailers. We had to create all of our own, we had to develop our own like shopping carts and backend systems and all of that stuff. We had like 150 software engineers by the time I left, a total of 800 employees. And really what we learned that entire time, that 17 years, is that, as we all know, right, most people that start a fitness program don't stick to it. And it's, it's like everybody says that, like, yep, we all know, it's like, it's almost like a kind of a joke, right? It's like, oh, the gym's gonna be very busy January 2nd with all the New Year's resolutionaries, but don't worry, they'll all be gone in 2 weeks. And it's kind of this crazy thing that we just accept that very few people adhere to their fitness programs. And as we all know, the only secret to fitness success is adherence over the long term. And so really we looked at this technology of virtual reality, and it really felt like this kind of back in the 90s of cyberspace, of the internet. And there was this new thing. It seemed like there's something really exciting here. It's in the early stages. And how can we then use VR to help people with that? And so with my co-founder, Preston Lewis, we said, let's go tackle this problem and see if there's something there. And really what we learned was, VR was a means to an end to help us to bring video game principles to fitness. Because sometimes it's easy to focus on like the VR side of it, which obviously that is a critical part of being like immersed inside a video game, using your body as a controller, and not just obviously an actual controller, and getting all of the psychological benefits of being fully immersed. And so we just went to work on that and said, hey, let's figure out how to take true video game principles, not just the basics of like, leaderboards and points and achievements, which, sometimes people put like gamification on things, but really like these games like Clash Royale on your phone, or like Fortnite, and the games that really get people hooked. And as we know, like video game addiction is actually can be considered a mental disorder, because you get so, video game psychologists, we call them like psychologists, video game designers and psychologists, they've figured out how to get you addicted to pixels and sounds, which is, it's not a drug, but it almost treats your body treats it that way. And so then we said, let's go and figure out how do we do an effective fitness program. We developed our own exercise machine to be inside the game. It's a resistance machine that uses electronic resistance, kind of like a tonal. And so you're in the game, you're in this huge arena, and you're playing like a kind of an esports style, like a sport kind of video game, where every movement you're doing, like chest press or squats or deadlift, is translating into an attack, like I'm shooting fire beams or ice shards, and you're doing all these different type of things where you're focused on the game and the strategy, but you're getting an effective fitness program out of it.
Yeah. And I love it because it makes you think you're not exercising when you're exercising, right? It almost tricks your brain. So tell us a little bit more about like the actual setup for this. Is this is a challenging thing to explain through a podcast medium, but like if we were to walk into one of these Black Box VR studios, what does it look like, and kind of how does it function?
That's a great question, and it is so new that it is hard to explain. But I would say it's currently a retail environment because the machine's it's still new, it's expensive, so we didn't want to like do home version of it yet. So it's kind of like an Orange Theory and F45, where you have a membership, and you come in, you schedule in the app the time you're coming in, and then you go into your own private booth. So it's like kind of a 10-foot by 10-foot booth where the machine is in there, the VR equipment is in there. The VR equipment has been sanitized using CleanBox, which is like UV light, like medical grade technology for sanitization. And then you basically put the headset on, it says, hey, is this you? Yep. Hit the button. And then you are in a 30-minute intense, we always say like kind of CrossFit plus video game workout. And then when you're done, you go and get all your stats in the app, and you can see how you did. You can see your progress with the exercises, because it's automatically using AI and machine learning to progressively overload you and
Yeah.
which you don't have to think about. And then you can, there's a social environment and get all your rewards and things like that in there as well.
I love it. And I was one of the other reasons I was so excited for this conversation is I don't know anything about this. So I feel like sometimes as an interviewer, and I'm sure you know this from things you've done in the past, when you know something about what you're interviewing on, you kind of know how it's going to go. Like having this conversation, I have no idea where it's going to go. And I'm just so curious. So you not only have designed the technology, but you've also had to design the actual equipment, the actual piece of equipment for this technology application. So it sounds like they both had to be designed concurrently.
Correct. Yeah. We're obviously big fans of resistance training, which obviously you are too, looking swole, by the way.
Thank
and,
you.
because not just for, resistance training is great, not just for, gaining muscle, but I mean, it improves every part of your health and fitness. And, really is that the key component, we believe. And so we wanted to make sure that we could get that in there, not just cardio, even though there is a cardio component also. And so there was nothing out there that would really work, like, put trackers on dumbbells, but then how do you change the weight? Do you drop them? It's certain machines that were out there. So we did have to invent our own machine, which, it's worked out really well. It's obviously, a lot more complicated to do it that way, but it really is part of the secret sauce. Because once again, like if it's not going to give you results, if you're not going to be able to gain muscle, lose body fat, gain cardiovascular endurance, like it's not useful, you might as well just play a regular video game at home. So that was a key component of it.
Yeah. And I do want to get into kind of the broader implications of VR in the fitness space in a second. But I guess the one kind of final question I have for right now on this model is, what are you seeing in terms of the consumer that walks through the door? I mean, my mind goes to, these sound like these could be, younger people. I just try to picture my dad who's in his late 60s, putting one of these things on. So what are you seeing in terms of the diversity of the consumer and the diversity of the fitness levels that might be coming through your door?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's definitely not the typical kind of, you always see like fitness bro or cardio bunny, like, which is a small percent of the population, of course. And even like at bodybuilding.com, like, you would think all of our customers must have been like all like, bodybuilders and competitors. But I mean, it was really just the average person you would see at the gym that aspire to a high level of fitness. But those people that have that, the ones that are really into it, like they have their routine. And once again, that's that small minority.
Yep.
And so what we found is it's a pretty diverse group of people, mostly around ages 25 to 45 is kind of that sweet spot. Okay. They care about fitness. They understand the importance of resistance training, but they also grew up with video games. Like I'm about to turn 45. And I feel like I'm like right at the beginning of like when people grew up with like Nintendo, like 1984, 85 kind of thing. So it's that type of group, but it's pretty split, like, I'd say 60-40 male to female. It's diverse set of type of goals, so some people it's more fat loss, some people more muscle building, and a lot of people just general health and fitness. What we kind of find is also outside of the core fitness industry, there's less people that are like trying to get like jacked and like huge, it's like, it's more people that want to feel like a badass, can we say. It's like they want to be like Keanu Reeves or Jessica Alba, it's like, and feel that way. And so, but you're right. It's not as much the older group, just because not as into the video game side of things, right? But when we do introduce it to them, they pick it up fast, because that's kind of the cool thing about VR. It's not press this button and do all these things. You're standing in a room and you're interacting with things like you would in real life. And so it's kind of amazing how fast people pick it up.
Yeah, that's great. And then again, that's still a broad demographic. And I think the point that you made is so important, is that these aren't your traditional people that are going into your Golds and your powerhouses because they want to get jacked. Those people are already being well served. And that's kind of where I want to, take this conversation, is that, it sounds like a lot of what you have identified with this VR modality is, hey, this is a way to reach more people in a different way. So through that lens, I think especially during the pandemic, fitness professionals have viewed, technology as being the enemy, like, the Peloton stole my clients kind of thing. How should fitness professionals be thinking about, VR as a technology? I don't want to say that's just on the horizon, because it's here right now. So how should they be approaching it?
Yeah, technology is always going to continue to move forward. And as we know, right, these days, like you can't be stuck in a certain modality. Like if you were writing for magazines back in the day, like there's not a lot of places to write for physical print magazines anymore. So it's going to change. the thing that's exciting about it is kind of what we mentioned is it brings in access to a whole different group of people, and we say it's like 87% of people are not able to adhere to a fitness program over time, where the studies show us something like 97% of people want to, so it's like almost everybody wants to, but almost nobody's able to do it. And if you can actually help bring these technologies to people, there's ways to do it where you're actually using VR, not as if you're a fitness professional and you have a different way of doing things. This could be something you can add on to your program. You could say, hey, we're going to do the more traditional stuff together or through the streaming service of some kind, but then we're also going to add in this type of cardio with this fun VR game, and we're going to do it this many minutes per week kind of thing. So it can actually work perfectly together with other types of programs. And then eventually it's like fitness professionals a few years ago might not have thought that they're going to have like a YouTube channel, right? I'm going to have a internet video channel, but now the tools are there to make that very easy and have that access. Eventually with VR fitness, that will also be the case where you'll be able to create these workouts and environments and have classes from people all over the world in there with you, where right now your demographic might be only people in a certain geo area.
Yeah, I just think about the fitness professional pre-pandemic that would have never imagined teaching somebody how to do a squat over Zoom or teach a group exercise class over Zoom. But man, that happened really fast in March of 2020. And this is just kind of the iteration on top of that.
Exactly. Yeah, so much better than video, because it's like, once again, like you're in the experience with them. And even if it's an avatar that's not quite looking like you're still embodied in that avatar. They're embodied there, and you're moving around each other, facial expressions, voice, obviously. Like it's a much deeper connection than you can get over video.
Yeah. Do you feel like, I mean, again, you started this in 2015, and then the pandemic happened. How did the pandemic accelerate? Because I feel like the pandemic would be an accelerant for what we're talking about here. How did that accelerate or just influence what you guys were doing and seeing?
I mean, in one way, it slowed us down because we're a retail gym, so it's everything was shut down, and so which gave us time to go work on the product, of course, and improve it based on what we'd learned. But the VR industry feels like the pandemic did help move things ahead quite a bit, but it really wasn't quite ready for it. So obviously we wouldn't want like the next pandemic, because nobody wants that, right? But it wasn't. It just wasn't quite there. Where over the last year or two, it has gotten there. And so I mean, like we've seen the Facebook renaming to Meta based on the metaverse and going all in on VR technology and AR coming up. And so really, it's been this super fast growth story where. When we first started, it's like nobody was talking about metaverse or VR. We used to joke when we talk about VR, they'd be like, "What are you talking about, RVs?" Or and nobody we knew had a VR headset. Now it'd be like random people, have them, and they're seeing the value, and that's kind of the next thing is when people put on a headset. Maybe we always hear the story like a 50-year-old mom got a headset for their kid, the Meta Quest little headset for games, and then one day like, oh, I'm gonna try it, and they play this fun little game called Beat Saber, which you have these lightsabers and you're like swinging around, and it's like a fun music rhythm game. And then they take the headset off and they're like, whoa, wait a minute, like I was just exercising,
Yeah.
And that's brought a whole nother demographic of people. And that is that older demographic of, I'd say, 40 to 60 that are buying these headsets for fitness, doing this game called Supernatural, which is once again kind of a rhythm game where you're swinging around and doing squats and things, more cardio. And Facebook, Meta is actually in the process of buying that company for $400 million. Like they've seen the value of fitness for VR.
Yeah. And look, I've done that Beat Saber game before, and I'm not a cardio fan. Second, I don't feel like I'm in great cardiovascular shape, but I've enjoyed that game, and it is definitely cardiovascular in nature. So I think it's interesting to hear kind of how a big tech like Facebook or Meta is embracing something like this. I mean, if there's no more validation you need for the emergence of a technology than Meta spending $400 million on it. You mentioned, so you said we're talking about VR, and then you said AR, which I believe that's augmented reality. Am I correct with the term there?
That's right. Yep. Good job.
Thank you. Just because I'm technology neophyte, what's the difference in that? I feel like augmented reality is the step beyond virtual reality, something like that. So help me understand that.
Sure. Yeah, they're very different in a way. Virtual reality basically is where you're completely blocking out the outside world. You're inside a different world, like, so you don't see anything in real life, unless you get close to something, it'll warn you. Don't run into that. Where augmented reality is where it's overlaying things into reality. So that would be more like glasses, the idea, like regular see-through glasses where you're seeing, characters or people or things flying around, like overlaid in your actual environment. And the reason why augmented reality is like coming next is because it's a harder problem to solve. Like VR is basically works today. Obviously, it's going to be vastly improved, headsets smaller, better, and all those things in the very near future. But augmented reality, because it's trying to have a very wide field of view using these very small glasses, because nobody's going to wear some big, huge thing just walking down the street. So it's a harder technical problem. But that's where you hear like Apple coming out with their VR headset next year. So all the rumors point to that, which will be a big moment for everyone. But really, the goal for them also is to get towards that AR. So you can have VR, like I want to be fully immersed in this meeting I'm having with you, or this fun game I'm playing, or this fitness experience, and then I'm going to flip it to AR mode, where now I'm overlaying directions or identifying what that plant is, or stars, or seeing everything that's that you want to see as you're just moving around and not having to pick up your phone all the time. Instead of being like this, it would be out there.
Yeah, well, thankfully for posture, maybe we can improve people's ability to not be looking down all the time. So I assume you see an application for fitness in augmented reality as well. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, it's like it's less can be less friction. Like, we're strong believers in VR because what we're trying to do, once again, is not just recreate typical fitness activities. Like, oh, you could be running, but you're running against the ghost of yourself on the street. Like, that's fun, and that'd be fine. What we're trying to do is, like, we want to do like the full video game aspect, where you're doing things you can't do in real life, in order to make it so you're fully in this epic battle and focus on the strategy of all these things. And so, which we believe, and some studies have actually shown, does help the time to go by faster and your pain perception to go down.
mm-hmm.
So there's actually, like I send after for the show notes, of some really good studies that have come out that said people actually just working out in VR. They actually did one that was the most basic workout in VR ever. There's a dumbbell in real life. You're in the VR headset. You can kind of see your hand, and you're lifting it. Do as many reps as you can. And then so they do it in VR or outside VR. And even just doing that, when you're in VR, immersed in this environment, a couple other things happening, you get more into that kind of flow state.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to do more reps, and they felt less pain. So it was less miserable to them. And then same with time perception, like how, they do this certain type of activity, like ride a bike and for 30 minutes, then they say, okay, how long did it feel? And be like, oh, it felt like 30 minutes, or it felt like 40 minutes. Same experience, slightly gamified, not even that gamified in VR, they would say it felt like it was 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And we believe if you can make it feel better, and you're not focused on the pain, and time goes by faster, like that removes a lot of the negative aspects of fitness. And that's what VR really does bring to the table.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, look, we grew up in roughly the same time frame, back with the AB button Nintendo, and then the ABC button Sega Genesis. And like, I remember back then, you get lost in time because you're in a game, and this is just that applied to exercise, which I think is fascinating for the people that don't enjoy going in the gym and sweating and getting the pump on. You could still do that without making it seem like you're doing it, which I think is that's the unique thing. You mentioned that in Chicago when you were talking, and it's just kind of got my mind going on the psychological aspect. So we'll link up to some of those studies that you mentioned on the show notes page, because I know some of the academic members of our audience would find that interesting. Ryan, where do you see this going? I mean, certainly you have your model, but to the extent that you can tell us kind of what you're visioning for the world of VR fitness in the future, where's this going to be in 5, 10, 15 years, to the extent you can look that far?
That's a great question. It's fun to think about, but the more I get into this, the more I realize how broken fitness is. Once again, because almost nobody's actually adhering to fitness programs. We're getting more and more out of shape, as we know, right? It's getting worse and worse. And then also when you really look at fitness, like I kind of joke, like every new fitness device that comes out, like a fitness machine, it almost looks like a torture device. We always joke like treadmills were literally invented for prisons back, in the old days. And even just looking at like, you pay money to go and like push sleds around at these different gyms, and and just lift things up and put them back down. And it's just, it's a necessary evil. And I think that's what most people would say. There's obviously some people that enjoy it.
Yeah.
Even the pro bodybuilders, we worked with and fitness models, like they don't always enjoy it. Or, on Instagram, they love it every time. But in real life, they're like, if I have to do this again, like I'm so tired of it. So I think the real true belief is I think we're going to look back and see like, man, the ability to add video game mechanics, right? And sometimes that can sound like this weird, dorky, strange thing, but really it's the same thing as like with sports. Like you're adding in strategy, you're adding in skill, you're adding in luck, variable reward, all these things that keep you in that flow state. And that flow state, as like that's where you're not thinking about time. That's where you're not thinking about the pain. And I always say like, if it's, fourth quarter of a football game and it's coming down to it, you're not thinking, oh, my lungs are burning a little, or I'm kind of tired. Like, no, like you're like all in, or skiing, it's like you're not thinking about that until the next day when you're sore. So it's kind of the long way of saying that I really think that gamified fitness through VR and AR will be by far the most common way to work out. We'll look back on the old ways as being almost medieval, and the whole idea is that then with these much smaller headsets that are for fully connected, I could be working out and playing these games with anybody in the world. These all sorts of different type of fitness routines will all be there, accessible either at a physical gym with some special equipment. Eventually, we'd have our equipment available for your home, or in unlimited number of cardio-based experiences. That it should turn the tide when it comes to overall health and fitness.
I'd like to take a quick break from today's episode to tell you more about one of our sponsors. As all of you are well aware, the COVID-19 pandemic has been absolutely devastating for the fitness industry, with upwards of 1/3 of our clubs closing nationally on a permanent basis. One of the few stabilizing forces during this very tumultuous period of time has been IHRSA, the Global Trade Association for the health and fitness industry. On my crusade to make fitness professionals part of our healthcare continuum, the work that IHRSA is doing is absolutely vital. They provide advocacy and lobbying support at both the federal and the state level. They support state alliances in many ways, and they also provide resources and best practices to club owners, operators, and individual fitness professionals. Indeed, if we are truly going to become part of the healthcare continuum, we must speak with one unified voice. We must have best practices that we implement, and we must come together as an industry to ensure the public, the medical community, and lawmakers hear our message loud and clear, that movement is medicine and it is essential. That is the work that IHRSA is doing. They've recently revamped their membership structure, allowing large clubs, small clubs, boutiques, and individual professionals to join the organization for an appropriate price that allows them to have access to all of these many great resources and allows us to unify and amplify our voice as an industry. For more information on the amazing work that IHRSA is doing, go to their website, IHRSA.org. That's IHRSA.org, IHRSA.org, to look in a little bit further into the work IHRSA is doing to unify our industry, to move us closer to being a part of that healthcare continuum. Now back to today's episode. Yeah. And like any technology, as it becomes more accessible, cheaper to manufacture. I mean, you just look at the past 3 years with the connected fitness technology. It's remarkable to see what's happened there. And I feel like what you're describing in the VR and AR space is similar. So if I'm a fitness professional listening to this, and that's our primary audience is fitness professionals, what should I be doing right now to get prepared for this? Like, how should I be preparing to be the fitness professional tomorrow that can utilize these tools effectively?
The first step, of course, is research for yourself. So I got one right here. It's like, you can get a Oculus Quest 2, or sorry, not Oculus, they changed it. Meta Quest 2 for it's like $399 or something like that now. Like, for some people, this is their most used fitness equipment piece that they've ever had. And just go and do like you did with Beat Saber. It's very simple. This doesn't require a computer. Some of the other ones, you'd have to hook it to a gaming computer. It's literally, this is it. There's some controllers, put it on. There's an app store in front of you, and there's fitness categories. And by far, that would be the best idea, is like just to use it yourself and start thinking about how can this be used for other people like that. Because even if you're not going to be like developing your own game or hardware or something, which obviously most people don't, eventually, like you said, those tools for like the fitness streaming during the pandemic, those tools will become available to like, hey, now there's a simple way for you to create and bring your community into a virtual space and provide that value. So it's really just probably research phase now, but the next year or two, which is soon, it'll be time to act, and then you'll be ahead of the curve.
Yeah, boy, that's such a good point. I mean, how many trainers wish that they would have thought of Zoom workouts prior to the pandemic, so they didn't have to be ramping that up when everyone else is ramping up? You probably are familiar with the guys from Renaissance Periodization, Nick Shaw and Mike Israetel, and they're actually both U of M alums. And they were doing the virtual coaching thing far before virtual coaching ever became a thing. And so how did the pandemic affect them? Well, it didn't really. And so I think being on the leading edge by having that experience is such a good lesson. And honestly, Ryan, that's part of why I wanted to have this conversation, because again, I think people avoid technology that they don't understand because they think it can't possibly ever affect them. And like you said, if Apple's doing it, if I look at Apple, Amazon, and Facebook, whatever they're doing, if we're not collectively paying attention to it in our industry, then it is gonna pass us by. And it sounds like you're acutely tuned into that.
Exactly. And because you're right, they're spending literally billions and billions of dollars to bring this to life. And there's just been so many examples. Like I said, I mean, when the internet first came out, I guess it was like VHS, or even before, the like Nautilus machines. Then it was like VHS home kind of stuff, and then eventually like Planet Fitness comes out, changes the whole gym industry and the way that people think about gyms. And the iPhone, the first version, it wasn't even an app store. It's like, what can I really do with this? And it's like now it's a critical component. You said connected fitness. It's the trend or the march of technology is going to continue. I think it's going to accelerate. But if you've been studying AI a little bit lately, just even on the side, it's like how fast that's moving. All those things come together with 5G and like GPUs in the cloud. It's going to be awesome. And I think the people that are ready for it will thrive, and we'll look back, like I said, and be very excited about it.
Awesome. Again, which is why I was so excited to have this conversation. Where can people go if they want to find out more about you, Black Box BR Fitness? Where's the best place to point them?
So our website, blackbox-vr.com. It's great to go on there and look at some of the videos. That's some of the best way. Obviously, the best way is to actually try it. We have 6 locations now. One in Boise, Idaho, one in San Francisco, 3 in the Phoenix area, one in Oceanside, California, with the idea to expand rapidly through a franchise until eventually having a home version as well. So I'd say that would be that. You can follow me on Twitter. It's just @VR. Makes it very simple. And we're actually just starting up a VR Fitness Insiders podcast, is what we're calling it. Now we have a few episodes out now to really focus on VR fitness professionals, the people that want to build this and learn more about it from that way. So yeah, I can find all those things, and I'd love to interact with you and get your feedback. So anybody wants to reach out anytime, I love having these conversations.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, it's great to hear about that podcast, because, that's being able to point our listeners into a direction for an education medium is great. And I can attest, I reached out to Ryan just cold via LinkedIn and said, hey, I'd love to have this conversation. And he was gracious enough to reach out. So we'll link up to all of that on the show notes page, so everyone has a chance to make sure they can link right to it. And I agree. The videos, we're sitting here talking about something that is much better seen and experienced than it is, talked about. So, please, check out the website. That'll be on the show notes page. I'm excited to see how this evolves. I'm, as a fitness business owner myself, trying to think of how this works into our model in the future. So I really appreciate your insight. And we're going to completely pivot for our last question here away from, well, I don't know if it's going to end up being away from technology or not, but this podcast, The Wellness Paradox, for me is all about solving the communication gap between fitness professionals and medical professionals. And, Ryan, you've had a very unique career in the fitness space in many different ways. So I'm curious as to, from your perspective, if you were to talk to the fitness professionals out there, how do you think they should bridge the gap between medicine and fitness? How do they bridge that?
Yeah, another great question. So the difficult part is, of course, each side, I think, looks at the other side a little bit, kind of with disdain. Like, the medical professionals, of course, looking at people selling, scammy supplements or giving people advice that's not going to actually help them. And of course, the fitness side is thinking, hey, we want to be preventative. We don't want to just give people a drug. Or on the other side, I understand, like from the medical side, it's like people come in asking for the drug, because you tell them till you're blue in the face that exercise and eat right. Not a lot of people want to hear that, or they don't adhere to it. Even adherence to prescription medication is shockingly low. It's like, hey, you're gonna die or have serious issues if you don't take this on the schedule, and people still don't do it. It's such a difficult problem. I would say from the fitness industry side, you definitely want to be looking at more evidence-based routines and behavior modification techniques. It's so easy. I mean, you almost feel a little bit for fitness professionals, because if you just tell somebody like you just need to just do squats, deadlifts, bench press, blah, blah, do that, 3 to 5 times per week and eat chicken and broccoli, like you can't sell that as an ebook, or, that you have to have, you almost have to have like this secret sauce that people are going to have to pay you $99 for your ebook or your services. And it does make it so if you don't have that, it's very difficult. But the people that are going to thrive are going to be the ones that are going to give people results, because most people learn about fitness programs, supplements, diets that they actually want to buy, like through other people, through friends. And that's even at bottom of the comment, I always say, like, I hear about new supplements every single day. Of course, they'd be pitched to me from all these different things, and I wouldn't really pay that much attention. Okay, that sounds good. But then I'd go into the break room and my friend would be taking this new stuff. Like, what is that? And he'd say, oh man, this is the best pre-workout ever. Now that's the one I'm buying. If you can give people actual results, as sad as it is, that's going to set you apart using those evidence-based systems. And that will help you grow long-term.
Awesome. And hopefully incorporating, VR one day also. You wonder what the world looks like that. Ryan DeLuca, thank you so much for joining us on the Wellness Paradox.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Ryan as much as I did. If you found it insightful and informative, please share with your friends and colleagues. Those shares make a huge difference for us. Any information we'd like to share with you from today's episode can be found on the show notes page by going to wellnessparadoxpod.com/episode 83. Please be on the lookout for next week's episode when it drops on Wednesday. And don't forget to subscribe through your favorite podcast platform. Until we chat again next week, please be well.